Hey, everybody. Welcome to Pink Shade. You guys, this is a bonus episode. I've got my friend here, Larrison Campbell, podcaster extraordinaire, Mississippi gal.
Hey, Mary
Hey.
Payne. Thanks for having me.
Okay. So, Larrison, last time you were here, you were talking about your podcast, Devil in the Ditch.
Yes.
I was about to say Ding Dong Ditch, but that's something different.
That's a totally different game, but also a really fun game to play as a kid, I will say. So,
um, and now you have a new podcast that I believe you just completed, right? This week was the last one.
yes. Well, so this week was supposed to be the last one. It turns
Mm,
out we're going to take a couple more weeks before we drop that final bonus episode, which I'm going to say publicly here on your podcast was solely so that we can take time to build an audience. And I'm going to say off to the side was because we had a permissions issue with a couple of interviews, and we're just going to do a different kind of episode. So
got it.
it's going to
Hmm.
be a really good bonus, though. It is, and
Okay.
I think this whole new reworked version is actually going to be more what the audience wants to hear. So
Okay, well, the new
I'm excited.
podcast is Under the Yazoo Clay. Now, it's a great name, and I love a good named podcast. And it's multi-layered literally because we're talking about like the Yazoo Clay is a character because if you're from Mississippi, all I heard my whole life was about like when you're driving in Jackson, especially, and the roads are so terrible, and it's the Yazoo Clay, and I'm like, I think it's the highway department, but no, it's the
Oh
Yazoo Clay.
no,
It shifts so much that you can't ever keep the. I mean, it's just like you have to have four-wheel tires and driving to Jackson.
it
It's
is
so bumpy.
the damnedest soil, and I say this as a former homeowner in Jackson, Mississippi. I don't think there's anybody who lives in Hinds County who has not had to have their foundation redone
Hmm.
multiple times. It is a constant battle of like getting somebody out there, getting them to like add, you know, put whatever they need to do to boost your foundation a little bit more,
Yeah.
crack sealed all the time. And so I went down there with a producing partner last April to start reporting on this. And the first thing, we're having a casual conversation. We're at this museum, this big museum opening. And the first thing they say, we ask them how the dig is going. They're doing this huge project, multi-year project to recover these unmarked graves that have been found near where the old state lunatic asylum, as it was called back in the day, used to sit. And the first thing they say is, do you know about the Yazoo Clay? Because it's the
Mhm.
worst damn soil ever. And I was like, well, as a matter of fact, I do, but I don't know about it from this angle. And it turns out it has been a huge problem for the people who are doing this work to look into these graves and try to understand who was buried there because the soil is actually eating the remains.
It's crazy.
And they
It's
say, like,
crazy.
I've never seen dirt that can eat metal, but this dirt eats metal. It is the wildest clay, wildest soil ever. So
It's so crazy, and it's explained at the beginning of the episode, like, why it is that way from the minerals and then how it comes to be, and it reminded me a lot. I don't know if you watched Yellow Jackets, but it reminds me a lot in Yellow Jackets, there's, like, that running river that's all red, and you're like, "What does that mean?" It's like some mineral that's coming down that's, in the theory world of Yellow Jackets, it's putting out some sort of magnetic field so that planes go down. Um, and not it's not so much in Mississippi, but the podcast, the premise is, and I remember when this happened, at the University of Mississippi Medical Center, which is, a fantastic institution. My brother-in-law graduated from there. All the many, many great doctors go there, and it's the cornerstone of, medical institutions in Mississippi. They're building on this section of it, and they go to start building on this new section, and they find pieces and parts and bodies. Come to find out, when they used to have the psychiatric institution there, they buried the people there, and either the graves aren't marked very well or over time it has just eroded so much. What did they say? They think it's like 7,000 people were buried there. Is that the number?
7,000 graves, that's what they think. And I think over the asylum's, 85-year history, there were a total of, I think, 30,000 people who walked through the doors there. And so when you think about that, a quarter of the people who went into the asylum ended up buried there. So then
Mhm.
it kind of becomes this sort of Pandora's box, so to speak, of, okay, well, when we look at this, like, what exactly are we going to find? What happened to the people inside that institution that so many people died?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
as we looked into it, and this is one of the things I really like about this show, is that you kind of go into it expecting that you're gonna be opening the doors to some gothic house of horrors,
Yes.
like people chained to radiators and
Yes.
yeah, and, I don't know, crumbling ceilings, and there is an element, there certainly are crumbling ceilings, thank you to the Yazoo Clay and the bad foundation,
Yeah.
but, but it's actually, like, really complex, and yes, like, they didn't understand psychiatric medicine 150 years ago. So,
Right.
yes, people were, to a degree, mistreated, but they also, like, were really trying to do the right thing in certain cases. In
Mhm.
certain cases, I should say, but it becomes this, like, really kind of beautiful, complex problem that as a Mississippian, just so reminds me of the state that we come from, which is full of these sort of good intentions being waylaid by bad intentions with like a nice, little like fusion of like really bad racism coming in to like derail all the plans. And
Yeah.
it winds up sort of being a microcosm of many of the problems that Mississippi itself has.
Yeah. The podcast sort of takes you on this journey, and you meet lots of people who say, I knew about my grandmother, but I never knew what happened to her. And you think these people died and they were never, like, alerted that their loved one had died there. It's sort of like they put them away and either weren't told or didn't think about it. And a lot which is very interesting that I looked up while I was listening, you were talking about a certain disease people had called pellagra, which
Yeah.
was a disease people had, but then it made it seem like they were crazy, but really it could have been cured with, like, an antibiotic.
It could have been cured with a vitamin. Isn't that wild?
A vitamin, yes, like with
Yes,
niacin,
it is
yes.
yeah, niacin, and that's actually where, enriched foods come from, which is a cool little side note
Yeah.
to all of this, but that is the thing, like, that is kind of the era of, quote, "medicine" that this institution existed in, which is that, like, one of the biggest causes of mental illness and later death at that time was just that people weren't getting enough vitamin B,
Mhm.
and it's
Yeah.
crazy.
And it affected everybody, and because you can't talk about Mississippi in that era and not address the racism, of course, and nobody wants to, and it's really hard to talk about, but it certainly was there. And I loved how you came at it from that angle as well, because Dorothea Dix, is a figure in it that was so for these psychiatric institutions and so like, I'm gonna get in there as a nurse and explain why it's important. And then you're like, but it's wonderful that she did all that for these people that were suffering, but she was a terrible racist. So that's a problem. It's like, oh, dang it. Can't we just have one thing? You
Yeah,
know?
they don't tell you that when they're putting her on a postage stamp, but yeah,
Right.
Dorothea Dix, turns out was a huge racist, which is how she was able to come down to a place like Mississippi because she's from Boston, and normally in the pre-Civil War era, people from Mississippi did not wanna listen to women from Boston, but she
Right.
came down and she said, "Hey, look, you know what's really terrible about the treatment of your mentally ill Mississippians is that they're being treated worse than you're treating Black people." And they said,
Mm.
"Oh, Lord, okay, well, we have to find a nice facility for them." And
Yeah.
so it actually began as a whites only institution. And then after the Civil War, they sort of begrudgingly, and the Reconstruction and later Jim Crow era, begrudgingly allowed Black people to come into separate and very much unequal facilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that when you're telling a story like this, which is so interesting about, it starts off kind of macabre with the buried bodies. And when you really get into it and you have to champion somebody like Dorothea Dix, who wanted to help people with mental illness, but then you also have to face the truth of that era and what happened. And people weren't really necessarily treated equally. And I'm fascinated by the fact that that place existed and then it moved to Whitfield. When the first time you said Whitfield, I was to myself like, okay, I wonder if she's going to get into it. Because, and yes, you did. Your whole life, you were told if you're bad, you're going to Whitfield. Or she's so crazy, she ended up in Whitfield. Or so and so's crazy, like Cooter Brown, they ended up in Whitfield. And Whitfield was always a threat in your life if you do something bad, you're gonna be crazy and end up in Whitfield. Oh, you're gonna go to Whitfield or you're gonna go to Parchman, one of the 2.
Yep, Whitfield or
Parchman's the
Parkland.
penitentiary, yes.
Mhm.
So
I feel like girls got threatened with Whitfield more and boys got threatened more with Parchment. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I loved that you touched on that, and so many different people of so many different age ranges saying their whole life they got threatened with going to Whitfield.
And that's the thing, and that's what I think is so interesting about this is that, we all existed in a post, lunatic asylum, Mississippi, but there was still another version of it. And that version, the only thing we knew about it was that it was the worst thing that could happen to you.
Right. Right. Crazy people are there. And it is what you're describing, like people chained to the walls and the crumbling ceilings and then not feeding them. And it's like a nurse ratchet. And you're thinking of the worst thing that's going to happen to me if I don't like pull it together or like don't go out drinking with my friends when I'm 16. I'm going to go to Whitfield or
Right,
Parchment, you
exactly.
know?
Yeah, you have 2 boyfriends at once, you're going to Whitfield. Yeah.
You're definitely crazy. 2 boyfriends at once. That is so funny. I tell you, I loved that it just the humor of it because it is such a serious subject, but you got to put in that humorous part. And of course, I, as a lived in Jackson my whole life, I did not realize that there was ever anything before Whitfield. And the fact that it's called the lunatic asylum is so wild.
Oh, that was the politically correct term of the era. Yeah, it was real nice to refer to the people who needed to go there as lunatics, It was
She's like, I got to go check grandma into the lunatic asylum.
right. And you do wonder why, none of these families ever knew that their relatives ended up there. I mean, when you have that kind of branding, who's going to be talking about that in the family? Who's going to be telling those stories?
And I loved the the written ledgers that were found that told from the nurse's standpoint how they were taking care of the patients.
I mean, as a woman in my mid 40s, it is quite chilling to look down there and see the number of women who were institutionalized for menopause. Um,
Right, right,
it's
right.
like, oh, there, but for the grace of God and a century go I.
That's crazy because, I could think back growing up and, my parents are in their 80s. I can think back growing up and my mother, I'm sure probably was going through menopause and she's hot and all this. And I'm 100% sure my dad said to her many times, if you don't quit that, we're going to send you to Whitfield. You know, you're acting crazy. Yes. Yeah.
And little did they know that was actually an actionable threat. Yeah.
That's
She wouldn't have been the first.
She wouldn't have been the first to be put in Whitfield because she was having hot flashes and just a little moody. Wow. I loved the story too, Larison, that it really got my heart because it was you were talking to one of the and I don't know the correct term, the woman
Sure.
that was archaeologist?
Oh,
Is
the
that what
bioarchaeologist. Yes,
Yes.
Dr. Mack.
Yeah, so she was pulling things out and she was explaining to you these things that they had found. It was a filling or it was a lot of rings. And I thought a good point was when you think about the people that were burying them, they were doing it with care. They weren't necessarily stealing things from the people. I liked that. And then she told that story and you caught it because she showed this certain ring. And then you said, well, wait a minute. I noticed that you have that same phrase on a tattoo on your foot. Now, I'm imagining the way you described her is sort of like a thin, wiry, gray-haired 70-something-year-old lady that got her foot tattooed. I was like and it was from that ring because it meant something for her husband. Tell me about that because that was
Take
like a
30
really
years
touching
off of that age, but then
Okay.
yeah. But she, I think anybody who spends their career sort of immersed in death and bones and, sort of the relics of death, probably has a pronounced macabre streak, and Dr. Mack has that. Like, she's
Mhm,
cool. Like, I would love to go out for drinks with Dr. Mack. She would be
mhm,
a blast. She's a good storyteller. She really thinks through the stuff that she's doing, and she's the one who's leading this dig, this attempt to sort of unearth these graves, study them, and then help relocate them so that the university can put up, a building on that same site. And it was a really beautiful story. So I noticed that, we're going through this and she pulls out this ring and she points it out because it is a valuable ring. It's I believe this one was silver. And engraved on the inside of it, it said ever true to thee. And her point
mm,
was, it's so nice to see this because there is this sort of myth or at least reputation that these places had, that the people who worked there would have taken advantage of the patients. And if they had
Mhm.
something valuable, they would have stolen it. And clearly they didn't, because this person was buried with us.
And that
And then,
person was a real person who had
yeah,
a
who
man or a woman or something, you know?
who
Yeah.
must have been in love at some
Mhm.
point, you know, who had this whole other life. And that ring, you know, really represents a full life lived outside of this institution. And then I did notice that Ever True to Thee was tattooed on her foot. And she explained that just a few months earlier, her husband, who had run sort of the mechanical side of the excavation,
Mhm.
they had been partners for 20 years, both, you know, relationship-wise partners, but also work partners for 20
Yeah.
years. And, he had suddenly died just of a heart attack, just kind
Oh.
of dropped dead. It was awful. And he was also the person who found that ring. And
Mhm.
he had been, you know, sort of running around telling everybody, he was like, "I found it. I found the greatest relic that anyone could find."
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
meant everything to him, and he was so proud of it, and he showed it to everybody. And then when he died, she got that tattoo to
It
remember him.
was really cool. And you also think hearing something like this, or if they put it in the newspaper or whatever, it's like, would somebody come forward and be like, "Oh my gosh, that was my great grandmother's ring." You know, I know that it's gotta mean something to somebody.
That's what I'm really hoping, honestly. Like, that is one of the big things that I wanna have come out of this, because, you know, God bless the University of Mississippi Medical Center and their research arm that is heading up this whole dig and this whole attempt to sort of tell the story of this asylum. They have gone on publicity tours to, like, every library in the state. They've held talks. They've
Yeah.
done, you know, local news pieces, but I still don't think the story that they're really looking for the family members of these people who were buried there, I don't think the story has actually gotten out that wide. And, you know, a couple of the people we spoke to are descendants of patients, and they don't even live in the state of Mississippi now. So
Right.
they're not gonna hear a talk at, you know, the Greenville, Mississippi Public Library.
Right. Yeah.
So I think I'm really hopeful that this podcast will actually get that out there and more people can start connecting to, you know, their ancestors.
I love the woman, towards the end, I don't know which one of the last couple of episodes was saying that she never had a place where she could say like, "Oh, my grandmother was there," you know, and she
Yes,
said, and now, at least when I drive by, I can say my grandmother was buried there." You know, she never knew much because her mom didn't talk much about it, just like that was the grandmother, we don't know what happened to her, and I think that for me, you know, knowing both of my grandmothers, one better than the other, for me, it would be really I would be really weird to think like, "Wow, like what happened to my mom's mom or what happened to my dad's mom or dad? Where are they? You'd wanna know." And so I hope that 7,000 people is so many people. Is so many people.
many people. And, you know, in a lot of cases, there's almost nothing left. Sometimes because of the Yazoo clay, sometimes all that remains of a grave is the outline of like where the bones were, or the
Wow.
outline, like the sort of, you can tell the soil is different from where the sort of the pine box coffin was.
Uh-huh. But the clay eats the wood and then
Clay
eats the
eats
person.
the wood and it eats the person. And, you know, like we know that soil over centuries and millennia, you know, can get rid of bones. That's why fossils are so cool when we find them.
Yeah.
But you don't expect it in like 85 years to do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, maybe that's why Jackson's always under a water boil
It is absolutely
advisory,
why Jackson is always under the boil water advisory.
because 'cause they're like, "You guys just get a jug and keep it in your fridge because I don't know what's gonna happen, and maybe if you boil it, it'll be fine." Oh
There's
my
a
gosh.
lot I miss about living in Jackson, but boiling my water to wash dishes is not one of those things.
I tell you, so you and I so what we have in common, really, we have my sister. Okay, let's explain this. I believe your parents live next door to my sister. Is that right?
Yes, I believe that's right.
So if you're looking at my sister's house, they were on the left?
Okay, let's see. My parents I thought were to the right of your sister.
Okay, my sister, I think, is 4233.
4 2. Oh, wait.
So
No, my parents are 835. So
Are they on a corner though?
No.
Hmm. I could be
But
making it up. I could
they
be making that number
maybe
up, but
they're
I
just
think that's the
around the
number.
corner, but,
Well, they are neighbors for
they were
sure.
and that's the thing about Jackson too, is that if you're in the same neighborhood, you're neighbors, and they probably just referred to each other as
They
neighbors.
actually could have their backyards could have touched, actually, now that I'm
Oh,
thinking about it,
I wonder
back to
if
back.
that's what it was, actually, because my parents shared backyard space with, like, 3 different
Yeah. Yeah,
houses.
yeah, yeah. Oh,
That
Lord.
makes sense.
My sister had those 3 boys. Um, so I feel bad. But, now and your mom is interesting because your mom went to medical school, like, late in life and became a doctor, right?
She did, yeah, she went to medical school when she was in her mid-40s is when she started. So, which is really cool. She finished her residency at the age of 51 and then practiced medicine in Jackson for 20 years after that, which is
That
great.
is that's like that's a great role model for a mom, you know?
It is. It
Yeah.
definitely kind of has allowed somebody like me who, also took a solid 15 years to really figure out what my career was.
Mhm.
It sort of took some of the pressure off. I was like, "Well, I can always change my career again."
Mhm.
You don't have to be locked into something locked into a certain path at age 23.
Now, how often do you go to Mississippi? Because I know, you guys are working on the final bonus episode for this
Yeah.
under the Yazoo Clay, but how often do you go, and have you already started a new project? Because this one was like, I know it takes, like, a year to get this together.
Yeah, I was actually in Mississippi day before yesterday,
Mhm.
reporting on a different show. This one's gonna come out in September, on the
Okay.
Sony's The Binge network, which
Yeah.
is also where you can find Devil in the Ditch, and then my
Yeah.
second podcast, Doctor Miracle. Those are both there too. So, um,
That
this will be another.
I was subscribed to the binge because of those podcasts.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Well, this will be a good one. This one, working title is The Vanishing of Janice Rose, and it's great. It's a missing persons story about a mom of 4 little girls. She's 23 years old, you know, high school homecoming queen, gets married early, and then one day, poof, is just gone. And her sister, in particular, who's a big person we talk to, and her friends, they all spend 45 years looking for her. And, without giving too much away, they figure out what happened to her, and it is the absolute last thing anybody expected. So,
And
it's
where
a
was this in Mississippi?
this is in South Mississippi. She was living in Columbia. Do you know Columbia?
Yeah, I do.
It's right north of Louisiana, and so she's
Mhm.
living there, and then she was sort of last seen she had a job, working in, like, Pearl River County area, so it's good. It's got, like, there's a trip down to Louisiana, we go down there, some things happen there, it gets really Cajun-y, lots of fun.
Yeah, it gets real Cajun-y, I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I had completely forgotten about Doctor Miracle till you told me about that because I listened to that too.
Oh, yeah,
That
yeah,
was crazy.
that was crazy. That was a little less, like, on brand for me, it was California and not the Deep South, and
Well, it was about that guru who was telling everybody he could cure their cancer and whatnot.
yeah, no, he is absolutely one of the worst people I've ever written
And
about.
still around, right?
He is very much still around. I do think he was just indicted on a new set of charges, which is good.
Yeah.
So, he may actually, you know what? No, he had already been indicted when we made the podcast. I think he had to plead guilty to, like, again, the sort of catch-all of practicing medicine without a license, which
Y
doesn't really get at what he did because by practicing medicine without a license, he was, sort of killing people,
yeah,
because he was telling them exactly the wrong thing to do to treat or not treat, their terminal cancer or whatever
right.
it was that they had. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah. I listened to those on the binge, and then but this one, under the Yazoo Clay is with iHeart.
It is. Yeah, it's my
Yeah.
first iHeart show, and they've been great to work with too.
I was just at 2 weekends ago, I was at Podcast Movement in Chicago, and I was at an iHeart party.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
I know a ton of people who are at Podcast Movement actually, and I really wanted to go, and the timing just didn't work out, but how
Yeah,
was it? Was it fun?
it's fun. This is the 3rd year I've gone, 3rd or 4th, and Denver, we did LA, and then this one, was in Chicago. Now the next one they have is in, August in Dallas, to which I said, "No, thank you." August in Dallas, I think I could just go to Mississippi and sweat if I want.
You know, it's really
Um,
funny. I was in Dallas on Sunday actually for this next show that's coming out, and, it was 43 degrees in April. And I didn't check the weather ahead of time. I was like, "Sure, I'll bring, like, a sweater." No, it
yeah,
was so cold. It was like New York cold there.
weird.
It was
Glo
very strange, and I was a
global
little I
warming.
was more than a little cranky about it. I was very cranky about it.
I was telling you I'm going to Oxford this weekend, and my husband was like, "Have you checked the weather?" I was like, "No, I'm sure we'll be in short. I'm sure I'll be dying." And he goes, "No, it's actually gonna be like 40 at night and 60 in the day." I was like, "Perfect." It was like, I love a 60 during the day is the best. You can walk around,
I
you can
I am
shop.
ready for 85-degree weather. I am so ready for it. But I say this, it's now like it's 42 degrees right now in New York, so I'm just
So you go back and forth, New York to the Mississippi
I
area
come
a
back as
lot.
often as I can. I really and my parents actually, they did the unthinkable and they moved to Connecticut about 6 months ago. I
What?
know, isn't that crazy?
Connecticut?
I know my poor dad has never really lived anywhere but Mississippi, outside of his, when my mom was in med school and when he was in college. The rest of his life has been spent in Mississippi, the
Why
poor, poor
Connecticut though, Larison?
well, one of my sisters lives in the town that they moved to, the other one lives
Okay.
about 40 minutes away from there, and then I'm about an hour and a half away, so
Okay, well, that
it's
makes sense.
all yeah, they wanted to be close to us.
Yeah,
I gotta be honest with you, I think they miss the social vibe of Jackson. You know, Jackson's a fun town.
it
Great
is.
people, good dinner parties, good storytellers, just all in all, a great sort of laid back vibe, and I don't
Yeah.
think they're getting it with the New Canaan, Connecticut crew. I don't wanna say anything. I think they're just finding their feet.
I think
They
as
they
older
do
people
love
move
a
it
lot of people they've met. I wanna clarify
no,
that.
no, 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 I think moving at any age, but especially if you're kind of, older and established, and then you've gotta move into a new group, and those people are older and established and have probably been friends, like, people in Jackson for 100 years, and now they've got new people coming in.
Totally. Yeah, and
Oh,
I think
wow.
that is that yeah, you're breaking into a whole new social circle, and their friends in Jackson were so cute. I really love their friends in Jackson, so
They're probably like, "We're gonna come up north and see y'all.
oh,
I
I
can't even
wish.
believe it."
If Ivy and Frank Alley are listening to this podcast, please come visit me.
Do you, how did you feel about Parker Posey, our Mississippi girl, and how great she did on White Lotus with that amazing accent?
I loved it. Okay, I will say though, and I am probably just betraying how little time I've spent in Laurel, Mississippi, but
Mhm.
B, how, how long I've now been back up in New York. At first, I was like, "What is that? What Parker, what is that accent you're doing?" And then I went and watched some videos of people from Laurel, and it turns out
Mhm.
she was absolutely spot on, and so now I retreated. But I did think from the moment I watched it, I mean, I saw a tweet that someone put out, and they said, "Can we get can we get the people at the Academy to please nominate Carrie Coon for Best Actress in a Dramatic Series and Parker Posey for Best Actress in a Comedy?" And
That
I
is
was like,
right.
"Yes,
That's
that
that's
that is
that nails it.
yeah,
Nails it.
she is every scene she did." And it's funny too because I think of Parker Posey as so iconic and, like, in and of
Same.
herself,
Mhm.
but I like, forgot that that's who it was. Like, the character was so believable and so like so many moms I have known throughout the years that I just completely yeah, I completely fell in with her character.
It was so great. I will say, random this is very random, but right before I got on here, I got an email that was, from HBO Max, and this is, like, on my personal account, not, sometimes I get, like, screeners, whatever, on the podcast one. This was to my personal account, was like, "Did you enjoy White Lotus? Would you like to take a survey?" I was like, "Well, yes, I would," because I love a survey, and I get these ones from NBC sometimes, so I don't know if that's a list I was on. So I took a survey about White Lotus, and it was like, Did you watch season 1, 2, 3? Which one did you like best?" And it's all about, now talking about season 3, and it's all about, and every answer I was like, Parker Posey, Parker Posey. Every answer I was like, the characters were so good, like, bring her back, bring her back. And I think, Mike White had told the cast to look at Southern Charm, to get a lot of those North Carolina accents. So when people were saying Parker Posey wasn't so North Carolina, I was like, well, she didn't say she was from North Carolina. She said she
Hmm.
lived in Raleigh, but in my mind, she's from Mississippi and moved to Raleigh because she went to UNC or Duke or whatever. And that UNC Duke thing is so real just from
Oh, I
living up here.
love that.
Yeah, I
The
loved it. I was
very
like, it's
beginning, and
so,
it was
it's,
like the 2 things were, like, kind of fighting for the soul of that kid. It was like, is he gonna have a UNC soul or is he gonna have a Duke soul? Like, which one?
it was so good. But I just, there's so many catchphrases from her. I mean, the one that's, speaks to me the most was, "Well, now I have to drink myself to sleep." I was like, "It's so good." It's like, "Don't judge me, I'm your mother." I sent that to my kids
We
so many times in the last month. "Don't judge me, I'm your mother."
um, my partner and I now just anytime something surprising happens, it's, "Piper, no.
No.
No."
Tsunami. I loved it so much. So, I mean, she and I are the same age and in the same, graduating high school class. And her twin brother, Chris Posey, used to date my friend Gigi for years.
Hmm.
And my friend Tom Paulson is very good friends with her. And so he goes, "I could just shoot her a note and see if she'll do your podcast."
She should absolutely come on this show, but
I
she'd have to
said,
do the whole thing in a Southern accent.
"Oh, Tom," I said, that's not how it works. Like, you can't just text Parker Posey and ask her to come on my podcast." He goes, "Well, sure I could." I was like, "Well, you could, but they're going to send me to her agent, her PR person, the HBO Max, whatever." So now that the show is completely over, I'm going to wait a week or two. And then I'm going to be like, maybe now that I wouldn't have to go through like HBO channels, maybe just her personally and like whoever's her booker,
I also
maybe I could do it.
I get the sense I get from Parker Posey is that Parker Posey does what she wants to do,
Hmm.
like, and everyone else sort of just has to fall in line behind it, and I think
Yeah.
that's probably true for her press people, so, yeah, I like your plan.
I like it too. I mean, if I tell you that Dazed and Confused is a movie that changed my life and, she's in it as that mean high school girl, so good.
Yeah,
So
fry
good.
freshmen, bitches, fry, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It has them lay on the ground and fry like bacon. Oh my
Mhm.
God. I was like, thank God we didn't have that at Jackson Prep.
I'm disappointed Jackson Prep didn't have that. I feel like, at the Washington School in Greenville, we all assumed that Jackson Prep was very much like that.
No, or maybe I just wasn't cool enough to be bullied. I don't know. That's you know what? I think I just answered my own question. Just answered my question. Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited about this other project that you're working on because I love a good true crime murder mystery.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about this one too. It's more sort of tonally in line with Devil in the Ditch. It's just a different
Mm,
kind of Mississippi community and but it's very much a family drama. And I love a family drama.
me too.
It gets me back to my soap opera roots. So
Speaking of family drama, since Devil in the Ditch came out, and many people, and you and I talked about this when I
mhm,
talked to you about it, and then we talked about it with my own family murder that happened,
yeah.
way when my dad was little, but that's on the Patreon, guys, if you want to hear it. But um, your cousin was featured very heavily in that with lots of people having suspicion on him for the murder of your grandmother.
Yeah.
And right, your cousin, right?
Yeah. My
Yeah.
cousin, my
Yeah.
dad's first cousin,
Yeah,
but
your dad's first cousin. So, I just wanted to make sure I was like, 'cause it wasn't an uncle, it was a cousin. And
no, but I mean, like generationally, uncle,
yeah,
technically.
and you talked to him at the end of it as sort of like a bonus, and you sat outside because he didn't want you to come in the house because he had a little bit of a hoarding issue. And
Mhm.
he kind of explained to you what it had been like all those years, like to be a suspect. And he would say, like, "I'm not gonna talk about it anymore," but then he would keep talking about it,
We keep going. Yeah.
And do you think people around Greenville still think he did it?
I know they do. They send me DMs all the time. Like it is every 3 months I get one from somebody in Greenville being like, "You know what I just heard he did?" And, "Come on, Larison, why didn't you just come out and say he did it?" And I'm like, "Well, I didn't have the actual evidence to do that." But
Yeah, you can't say that.
100% the town of Greenville has solved the case in the town of Greenville's mind.
Okay.
And, I whether they're right or wrong, I guess given the information we have, we might never know, but
We'll never know unless somebody confesses. I mean,
yeah.
It's
Yeah,
terrible.
I know. Well, that's another thing. I actually got a DM about this very recently. Someone was like, "Do you think he's gonna confess on his deathbed?" And I was like, "I do not think that he's going to confess on his deathbed." Um,
No.
I don't see that happening. I think if he did do it, and, jury is still out, but, I think if he did do it, he has convinced himself he didn't.
Right.
I think we can get ourselves to believe just about anything that we want, and I think there's a lot of motivation for him to convince himself that something different happened, and he lives in a pretend land anyway, you know?
Mhm.
He
And
doesn't live in the same world that you and I live in.
does he have, like, friends? He still goes to church? Does anybody, like, see him besides, like, at the grocery store?
He still goes to church, he has a couple of friends, I think it's more people who sort of look after him
Mhm.
than actual, friends the way we think of it, but he does still have, yeah, he still has some people who look after him.
And how
And
old
I
is he
and I
now?
he is 74.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And I have called him a couple of times to check in. He'll send me text messages at, like, 2 a.m. sometimes, usually, having to do with the Libertarian Party in Greenville.
Oh, I'm sure that's live and kicking in Greenville, the Libertarian Party. I'm sure that's yeah.
He's the head of it, if it sort of tells you anything about, the, groundswell of support that they have. But,
Okay.
yeah, so, like, I'll hear from him occasionally, and, I feel like I don't like the idea that anybody is sort of marooned socially, so
Yeah.
he was kind enough to be honest with me for this project, and so I feel like I should be kind enough to, you know, check in on him.
Yeah, I think so. I think you handled it perfectly, and I think that, yeah, a lot of people just think he did it, and there's no other choice. And again, once he is no longer with us, you guys may go through that house and find something. If you
Yeah.
could get an excavator in there, I don't
I
know,
was about to
but
say, oh, the thought of going through that house is terrifying, but they've
also fascinating.
I know, truly
Fascinating.
fascinating.
Okay, well, tell everybody where they can follow you and find out more about, of course, Devil in the Ditch, Dr. Miracle, and the new one Under the Yazoo Clay, and then, of course, the new one that's going to come in September. I'm
Yes,
excited.
please go ahead and subscribe to The Binge, for
Mhm.
The Vanishing of Janice Rose, and yes, you can find, Under Yazoo Clay, wherever you get your podcast. It's Apple, Spotify, iHeart, and, you can follow me on all the socials at This Is Larrison.
Larrison. You guys, if you ever wonder about an interesting Southern name, Larrison Campbell's a good one.
Thank you.
It's a good one. I had a conversation yesterday with a podcaster, Molly McAleer, and she's from Boston and she lives in LA. And she said, at the end, we were talking, she goes, I understand like it's Mary Payne, but we weren't recording. And she says, but I'm just so interested. Why? Because it really sounds like a roller derby name or like a drag name that like I made up. And it's like an entendre with the Payne. She's like, I'm dying to know about it. I was like, oh God, I wish it was that fun. It's just
I
funny.
really wish now that you did roller derby because that is a great roller derby name. It really is.
I'm not tough enough for even roller skates. I can't handle anybody knocking me over. Are you kidding? But no, it was like, and that's why, I said, let me just break it down for you in the South. A lot of people will take a maiden name or a middle name of my dad. And then that's where it comes from. My grandfather, George Pangosser. They had a bunch of boys all down the road, George Pangosser. My dad, had his third kid. I assume he thought it would be his last and was like, well, I guess I'm not going to have a boy. So I got to throw in Payne and that's how I got it. And I didn't like it and I didn't like it then and I don't like it now and I have to explain it every day of my life, but it's my name. And she's like fascinating. I mean, she was fascinated. So I'm trying to find the audio. My
Interesting.
sisters and I did, my sisters and my mom and I did, we were coming back from the beach and in the car, we just recorded all the double Southern names that we could think of. And I put it on my Patreon as like, I mean, terrible audio. We're in the car, but I mean, it's like 30 minutes of us just throwing out double names for people to understand?
Yeah, I've actually got some really good ones if I can, add them onto the pile. My best
Okay.
friend growing up, Mary Winston.
Yep.
Another really good friend, Ellen Douglas, and,
Mhm.
and then my cousin was Ann Dyer, which I think
Okay.
all, like, really great, all follow the same pattern of women's name first,
Yep.
family name second.
Yeah. I said a lot of it is Ann something, Mary something.
Mhm.
Um, And I was like, we know Ann McCaslin, we know, and she's like, what? I mean, she just could not, but she was like, I'm always so interested to learn these like regional things. And I was like,
And
yeah,
a lot of people, like, they'll, like, do a satire of a Southern sorority girl, and it'll be like Mary Claire or, like,
yeah.
Mary Susan,
I'm
and
like,
you're like,
that's
"No,
not
no,
it.
no, 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 that's not the real South. The real South, you gotta have the family name second."
Yeah, you got to have that weird middle name that people think is your last name and just call you Mary, even if you explain it and they still call you Mary. And then you go, you
You
know what?
have
We're
to be
probably,
haunted by it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think Mary Larrison or Ann Larrison would be a great name.
Yeah, well, Larison, as these things go, Larison is my middle name, so
Yeah. And what's your first name?
I have my first name is Aline, so it's Aline Larrison Campbell. I was named for my
Okay.
grandmother, whose
Uh-huh.
first name was Aline and last name was Larrison.
Yes.
So,
Well, that's
yeah,
my sister is named
it's the
Finney.
same pattern, yeah.
My grandmother's name was Elizabeth Finney. So my sister's name
Oh,
is Finney
and you
Elizabeth, And
yeah.
then my sister Tay is named after my mom's maiden name, which was Taylor. So she's Tay.
That's
You
cute,
know,
I like Tay as a nickname for Taylor, that's
it's
cute.
so funny because, Taylor is such a popular name now, and it doesn't occur to me at all that Tay's name is Taylor ever, even though I mean, legally it's not anymore. She legally changed it to Tay Cosser Morgan, but
Mhm.
instead of Margaret Taylor Cosser. I mean, it's and
I think
anybody says Tay and then they say that Tay for like a nickname for Taylor, it doesn't even like put together to me that that's my sister's name.
that's so funny.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
I love the style. I love naming people after people in, the family and stuff like that.
I tell my friends, when they were all, having babies, and a lot of them had babies way before me, I was always like, just think about it. Just think about the name if you think they're ever going to move. Just, I'm here to tell you,
Yeah.
it's rough.
Yeah,
It's
the
rough.
double name, I know, and actually, one of my friends recently had a kid, and she was like, I really wanna call her by her middle name," and I was like, "Please don't. Don't,
Yeah.
don't, don't. Do not do it." Like, I know you don't think it sounds as pretty when you read it all out, but it will make
Mhm.
her life easier if she doesn't have to have a separate name at the doctor's office.
Yes. And a lot of times now on forums, it'll say, like, for you, it would say, like, Alien Larrison Campbell, and then it would say nickname.
Yeah.
And then you could put
They don't
Larrison
look
as your
at that.
nickname.
They don't look at that, they don't care. They just see the first one and they're just like, "Aline," which
And
is
then
fine.
you're like,
And
I
then I
don't know
don't hear
that.
them when they call me in the waiting room.
I had yesterday in the waiting room at the doctor's office, I heard, "Mary, Mary," and this lady hopped up and walked in. They said, "Are you Mary Gilbert?" She goes, "Oh, no." And she walked back and I go, "I guess I'm Mary Gilbert. Here I am. It's not my name." I
Let me
literally
explain double names to you now on the
I
way.
don't care. I don't care. It's I'm the doctor's office. Like, I'm gonna see you. It's one of those once a year doctors. I was like, "I don't care."
That's fine.
But
Yeah.
I have been coming here for 24 years and you still don't have it right, but that's okay. It's okay. I did give
Yeah.
birth to both my children here, but it's fine. Um, Everybody follow Larrison Campbell. She is a wonderful podcaster. She is a real life journalist, and she's serious business, you guys, but funny at the same time too.
Thank you. It
I
is
think
always so much fun coming on your show. So,
this is a
thanks
bonus
for letting me.
episode. People love when I talk to podcasters back from my Pain in the Pod day. So I love when I have a podcaster that I know. I'm like, let's come on, let's talk podcasting. I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, don't hang up. Thanks, guys.
All right.